Commander Lex Halley stood on the jagged ridge, his breathing heavy inside the cracked helmet. The air was thick with dust and heat, carrying the scent of burned metal and ozone. His armor, once polished and proud, now bore deep gashes and blackened scorch marks. Around him stretched the deadly wilderness of Varnock 7, a place feared across the galaxy. The planet was officially catalogued as a Class X hazard world, but to humans it had a simpler name, DeathWorld. Nothing here was friendly. Everything that moved was either poisonous, sharp, or smart enough to hunt in packs. The land itself seemed alive, shifting, breathing, and always watching. Lex hadn't come here by choice. 3 days ago, the exploration vessel Resolute Dawn picked up a priority distress call. An alien transmission from the Zadari, a known peaceful species of reptilian diplomats. The message was desperate, filled with static and fear. A science crew stranded, their ship failing, lives at risk. Standard protocol said to avoid death worlds, but Lex and his team were soldiers first, and soldiers answered calls for help. They landed at dawn near the coordinates provided in the signal. The forest below the landing zone was like nothing seen. Before tall, glassy trees glowing a faint blue, their trunks swaying slightly, though there was no wind. Strange birds with diamond-hard feathers circled silently above the canopy. The mission seemed simple, in and out. Extract the survivors, patch them up, get off-world. Only it wasn't a rescue. It was a trap. Within moments of landing, all hell broke loose. The tree line erupted in fire as hidden energy weapons opened fire on the dropship. Screams echoed through the comms as soldiers were cut down by plasma blasts or dragged into the forest by unseen things. Lex barely escaped, his gun jammed, dragging a wounded teammate behind him. But even that soldier vanished when they rested for a moment in a crater surrounded by bone-white fungus. Lex never saw him again, just a single scream and silence. He'd been alone ever since. The forest didn't let him rest. Strange creatures skulked in the shadows, eyes glinting. At night the trees groaned and whispered. His rations were gone, his water filters clogged with thick red sludge. The gravity was heavier than earth, pulling at his muscles like chains. But worst of all was the feeling that he was being watched, not by animals, but by something smarter. Something patient, that day. While moving across the ridge to find higher ground and possibly get a signal out, Lex saw something that stopped him cold. Below, where his team had landed, the dropship remained, but it had been split open like a crab shell. Black vines crept over its hull, pulsing with a sickly light. And the forest moved, not with wind, but with purpose. The trees themselves shifted position, their roots crawling like tentacles, their limbs twisting unnaturally. Lex raised his rifle, heart pounding. He wasn't imagining it. The trees were alive. They were watching. Then his helmet crackled on it. Wasn't his team. It wasn't a rescue ship. Human ... still alive? The voice hissed. It was deep and wet, like a whisper from inside a cave, not Zithari. Something else. Something older. Lex ducked behind a rocky outcrop, scanning the area. Who is this? He demanded, keeping his voice low. No reply. Only the forest answering, groaning all around him. And then the worst sound yet. The unmistakable snap of bark behind. Him. He spun around, rifle raised. A tree that had been 5 meters away now stood only 2. Its long branches stretched forward like arms. Red vines coiled around its base like veins. It had no eyes, no face. But Lex felt its attention like a weight pressing against his chest. Another branch lashed out, missing him by inches. It sliced through his shoulder armor, leaving sparks and torn plating. He rolled backward, fired his rifle, and the tree howled a screech like metal twisting underwater. Black sap sprayed into the air, sizzling as it hit the ground. Lex didn't wait. He turned and ran. The forest came alive around him. Trees bent and shifted. Roots lashed out like snakes. He dodged, weaved, jumped over grasping vines. Creatures scurried beside him, small, shadowy shapes with glowing eyes and far too many legs. Above, the sky dimmed as clouds of ash and spores filled the air. The light from the bioluminescent trees cast strange, flickering shadows, making it harder to see Dot. But Lex kept running. He ran because he realized the truth. The Zithori hadn't just betrayed them. They hadn't just called for help to Beta. Trap. They had known. They had known what lived here. They had sent the signal on purpose. Not for rescue, but for sacrifice. Lex burst out of the dense trees into a clearing filled with jagged rocks. His lungs burned, sweat pouring down his face. He turned to look behind him. The trees had stopped. They stood just beyond the edge of the clearing, swaying softly. Watching, he collapsed to his knees, exhausted, eyes wide. That voice again, hissing. Closer this time. Still alive. Excellent. Lex looked up, his breath catching. The trees began moving into the clearing, toward him. Lex didn't stop to think. As the trees moved toward him, he scrambled to his feet and bolted into the forest again, heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. The forest floor was soft and wet, coated with a dark, mossy growth that oozed underfoot. Every step made a sickening squelch. The glowing blue trees around him twisted, their limbs curling in strange patterns, as if they were reacting to his presence. The deeper he went, the more unnatural everything became. Thick red vines slithered across the bark like veins, pulsing slowly. Leaves whispered in voices he couldn't quite understand. He could feel it in his bones. This place was not just alive. It was aware. A sudden crack rang through the trees, and something lashed out from the side of vine, thick and barbed, slicing through the air. Lex dropped to the ground just in time, the vine tearing through his shoulder armor like it was paper. Sparks flew, and pain flared in his arm. Gritting his teeth, he rolled behind a jagged rock and raised his rifle. The vine curled back like a serpent, waiting for another strike. He squeezed the trigger. The blast of plasma hit the vine square in its center. It screamed. Not the kind of scream an animal makes. This was high-pitched, intelligent, furious. Black fluid sprayed from the wound, sizzling as it touched air, smoking as it burned through the rock. Lex didn't wait. He pushed himself forward, one hand clutching his bleeding shoulder. The forest around him felt tighter now, almost like it was closing in. The trees leaned closer. The air grew thicker, hotter. Breathing felt like inhaling steam. Something skittered past his feet, small, fast, too many legs. He didn't look. He just ran. After what felt like hours, he stumbled into a strange clearing. It was quiet here. No vines moved. The trees stood still. The light dimmed, filtered through a thick canopy overhead. And in the center of the clearing stood something he hadn't expected to find: cages. Dozens of them. They hung from the trees, made of twisted metal and bone. Inside them were bodies, some long decayed, others recent. Not just humans. Zithari, Drevians, Kalari, species from across the galaxy. Lex moved closer, choking back bile. One cage still held a human, what was left of one. Tattered armor, a shattered helmet, and a skeletal hand still gripping a sidearm. The sight hit him hard. It wasn't just a battlefield, it was a harvesting ground. Someone was capturing intelligent life and caging them here, feeding off them. Lex's mind raced. This wasn't a random trap set for humans. It was a pattern. A system. A setup. He turned and looked deeper into the forest. Beyond the cages, half hidden by overgrown vines, he spotted something even stranger. A structure. Not natural. Not part of the forest. A building, old and cracked, carved from dark gray stone. It was shaped like a temple, with high archways and tall spires. Symbols etched across its surface glowed faintly, the same sickly blue as the trees. Lex approached carefully, rifle raised. The moment he stepped through the broken archway, the temperature dropped. Inside, the air was still and cold. The walls pulsed with energy, faint patterns moving like veins. In the center of the temple stood a console, ancient, alien, and flickering with life. Lex wiped the dust from the surface. The interface came to life. Alien text scrolled across the screen, auto-translating as his helmet sensed. Signal sent. Deathworlders will arrive. Prepare. Sacrifice. Lex stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. Deathworlders. That meant humans. Or species like them. The most feared in the galaxy. Resilient. Dangerous. Evolution's wildcards. Everyone called humans Deathworlders because Earth itself was nearly as deadly as this place. So why would anyone want to bring more of them here? Unless they were trying to kill them. They were trying to feed them to something. He scanned the console again. A map popped up, hundreds of red blinking lights scattered across the galaxy. All of them tagged with the same message, SOS beacon active. The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. The Zithari weren't victims, they were bait. Working for something else, something powerful enough to use entire planets as traps. A low rumble vibrated through the floor beneath his boots. The walls of the temple shook slightly. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. Lex turned, eyes narrowing. Another rumble. Closer. Outside, he heard trees collapsing. One after another. Boom. 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 He bolted from the temple and ran to the edge of the clearing. The trees were falling. Not cut down, flattened. Crushed under something massive. Something moving through the jungle like a living storm. Lex pressed himself against a tree, trying to stay hidden. That's when he saw it. A shape rose from the jungle, towering over the treetops. It moved on 6 massive legs, each one digging deep into the earth with bone-crushing force. Its body was covered in black armor that shimmered with starlight. Its eyes glowing molten orange. Spikes and tendrils twisted from its back, and every step it took warped the ground beneath it. It let out a roar, deep, ancient, filled with hunger. Lex didn't breathe. He couldn't move. Then, above him, the sky shattered. A sonic boom roared through the air as dark shapes tore through the clouds. Ships, dozens of them. Human vessels, sleek, angular, weapons glowing with power. The fleet had arrived. Lex's heart surged with hope. Reinforcements, rescue, firepower. But then, just as quickly, dread returned. The first missile hit the jungle, and the explosion rolled across the trees like fire. But the creature didn't run. It stood in the flames. And then it did something worse than attack. It absorbed the fire. Its body pulsed, and it grew. Asterisk. The ground trembled as the monstrous creature stepped through the burning jungle, its molten eyes fixed on the sky where the human fleet hovered. Trees collapsed under its weight, and ash rose like a second sky. Lex watched from the cover of a shattered stone wall near the edge of the ruined temple. He'd seen many horrors during his time as a soldier: massacres, orbital bombardments. Entire cities turned to glass, but nothing like this. This thing wasn't just a predator. It wasn't even a life form in the usual sense. It was a force of nature, or maybe something worse, a weapon that had learned to feed. The flames of the human bombardment had turned the jungle to ash. But rather than being wounded, the creature stood taller, its black armor glistening with heat it had absorbed. Red veins of fire traced along its sides, glowing brighter with every second. Lex's jaw clenched. They hadn't heard it. They'd made it stronger. He tapped into the alien console again, the ancient Zithari technology still flickering beneath the temple's moss-covered roof. The display blinked back to life, and this time, Lex dove deeper into the files. There were logs, records of experiments, test results, data on captured species. It became clearer with every line he read. The Zithari weren't explorers or scientists here. They were servants, cultists maybe. Their job was to lure deathworlders like humans to places like Varnock 7, then hand them over to the beast as sacrifices. The screen showed footage, past events. A squad of Drevians, the reptilian warriors fighting the same creature in another jungle. They burned it, stabbed it, nuked it. Each time it grew. Each time it evolved. It wasn't just surviving, it was learning. And it only ever fed on the most dangerous species, deathworlders. Lex swallowed hard. The Zithari weren't trying to kill humans. They were feeding this thing with the most adaptive, resilient species they could find. And with every kill, the creature became stronger. Lex's helmet pinged. A fleet channel had opened. A secured comms burst from one of the dropships above. Ground forces report heavy resistance. Unknown Class Omega entity on site. Repeat, entity is hostile. All available units converge. Lex activated his mic. Do not engage it head-on. It absorbs energy. Conventional weapons are useless. There was static, then a reply. Who is this? Commander Lex Halley, Planetfall survivor. That thing isn't natural. You'll only make it worse. A pause. We've already lost 2 dropships. It's targeting the engines. It's intelligent. Lex stared up through the smoke at the dark shape in the clouds, the lead human battle cruiser circling above. Then he looked back toward the monster. It had begun moving again, slower now, not with urgency, but confidence. Like it knew it was unstoppable. He turned back to the console and kept digging. There had to be something, some weakness. Something the Zithari hadn't meant to leave behind. A reference blinked in one of the older logs. Cycle event. The First Awakening. Attached was a broken translation and a video feed from centuries ago. Lex watched in silence. It showed the creature in an earlier form, smaller, barely 2 stories high. A group of Zidari had tried to study it. It killed them. Then another species tried to destroy it. It consumed them too. Then the Zidari started feeding it intentionally only the strongest. Over time, the thing had grown into what it was now. But the file also mentions something buried beneath the surface, a severance core, a kill switch embedded deep in the planet's crust. Ancient technology, not Zidari older than any civilization in the current galactic era. The beast had been contained once, sealed, but the Zidari had broken the seal to awaken it. Lex marked the coordinates. It was far 20 clicks southeast, beneath a region of shattered cliffs and boiling geysers. Getting there meant moving straight through the beast's territory. He looked up just as another streak of light tore through the sky. A dropship came crashing down nearby, slamming into the jungle with a thunderous boom. Lex sprinted toward the wreckage. If any humans survived, he needed help and a ride. The crash site was a mess of twisted metal and smoke. Lex found 3 survivors pulling themselves out. He helped a medic with a shattered leg and waved over 2 soldiers. They recognized him immediately. His face was on every fleet database. Commander Halle, war hero. The DeathWorlder who'd survived the Vecra infestation. We need to get out of here. One soldier said. No, Lex replied. We need to go deeper. He explained what he'd found about the creature, the sacrifices, the severance core. The others went pale. You're saying the Zidari woke this thing up on purpose? The medic asked. They've done it on multiple worlds, Lex said. And this one is learning from every fight. The only way to stop it is to shut it down from the inside. The team didn't hesitate. They armed themselves, loaded what they could salvage from the wreck, and followed Lex into the burning forest. Time was running out. The monster was getting bolder, now swatting at human aircraft overhead. The fleet couldn't hold it off forever. They moved fast through the jungle. The ground cracked beneath them, and geysers burst from the earth. The trees screamed again as they passed hollow, echoing sounds that rang in Lex's chest. He felt it watching. Always watching. When they reached the shattered cliffs, the sky above them turned red. The creature was approaching. They could hear it closer now, tearing through the earth like a mountain with legs. Then, just before they began their descent into the caves below, one of the soldiers froze. Commander, he said quietly. Lex turned. High above, on the ridge, stood a figure, not Zidari, not human. Something else. Tall, thin, cloaked in shadows. Watching them with glowing white eyes. It raised one long hand, and the creature behind it stopped moving. Then the figure spoke, not with a voice, but directly into Lex's mind. You found the core. Good. Let's see if you can reach it before the planet wakes fully. And just like that, the figure vanished, and the beast roared back to life. The tunnels beneath the shattered cliffs were narrow, twisted, and hot enough to burn skin through armor. Lex led the way, guiding the team deeper with a shaky hand scanner patched into the alien coordinates he'd pulled from the Zidari console. Every wall pulsed faintly with a blue glow, veins of strange energy crawling through the stone like living circuits. The deeper they went, the louder the rumble of the surface above the footsteps of the beast. Now aware, now chasing. The medic limped behind him, one arm wrapped in a temporary brace. The two soldiers flanked their rear, rifles raised, watching the shadows. But it wasn't just the creature above they feared. In these tunnels, something else moved. Whispers echoed through the stone. Faint lights blinked at the edge of vision. And sometimes, Lex felt hands brushing against his shoulders when no one was near him. They were too deep now to turn back. After nearly an hour, they reached it. The Severance Core thought it wasn't a machine, at least not like any the humans understood. It stood like a monument in a wide underground chamber, a pillar of obsidian rising from a pool of shimmering light. Floating symbols circled it slowly, pulsing with deep, ancient rhythm. It was not Zathari. It was older. It radiated a strange kind of power, not technological, but intentional. Like it was waiting. Lex stepped forward, and the symbols began to spin faster. What is this thing? The medic whispered. Lex touched the surface of the pillar. It was ice cold, even in the boiling cave. Then a voice, not spoken but felt, echoed in his mind. You stand at the seal. Break it, and the parasite dies, but so does the world. Lex's hand froze. He turned to the others. It's a kill switch, he said. For the entire planet. The soldiers looked at one another. One nodded slowly. Better the world dies than that thing spreads. Lex agreed. But something didn't sit right. That figure, the cloaked being from the ridge, had known about this core. It had wanted Lex to find it, had it been helping or watching. And if it could control the beast, even momentarily, what else could it do? Still, there was no time. The cave trembled violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. One of the soldiers checked the scanner. It's coming, 200 meters and closing fast. Lex placed his hand fully on the pillar. The floating symbols burned brighter. The chamber shook, and light burst from the pool around the core. Ancient mechanisms began to unlock. A countdown began, ticking down from 60 seconds. The team formed a perimeter. The rumbling grew louder. Then the tunnel exploded inward. The beast tore through the rock like it was paper. It didn't walk, it crawled now, slithering with a dozen limbs, its body reshaped, transformed. Horns curled from its skull and molten. Cracks split its chest wide open, revealing a glowing, twisting heart. It roared into the chamber, and the air itself burned. The soldiers opened fire, every weapon lighting up the dark with plasma and bullets. The beast screamed, flinched, but kept coming. One soldier was grabbed by a tentacle and slammed into the wall so hard he vanished in a cloud of dust and blood. Lex gritted his teeth. 30 seconds left. He turned to the medic. Get out of here, now. The medic didn't argue. She hobbled toward the side tunnels, dragging the wounded soldier with her. Lex stood his ground, emptying his rifle into the beast's head. But it wasn't enough. Then, just as the beast reached him, the countdown ended. The Severance Core let out a single deep pulse. Everything stopped. The creature froze mid-lunge. The light turned white-hot, searing the air. And then the planet screamed. A wave of force burst outward from the core, tearing through the stone, the roots, the very air. The monster howled, its body warping, cracking, melting from the inside. The energy wasn't explosive, it was erasing, undoing. The beast twisted in agony, reaching toward Lex with one last claw, then turned to ash. Ripped apart cell by cell, the walls began to collapse. The ceiling cracked. Lex turned and ran, chased by the roar of a dying world. He reached the upper tunnel just in time to see the medic helping the last soldier into a surviving escape pod from the downed dropship. Lex dove in after them, slammed. The hatch shut and launched. The pod burst out of the cliffside like a bullet, fire and rock chasing them as the planet buckled below. From orbit, the human fleet watched in stunned silence as massive energy fractures split the surface. Forests fell, mountains cracked. And then Varnuk 7 began to collapse inward, vanishing into itself like a dying star. The fleet picked up the pod seconds later. Lex emerged coughing, covered in dust and blood. The Admiral met him on the deck of the carrier, eyes wide. We saw it. The whole thing. What the hell was that, Commander? Lex looked up at the cracked view screen, showing the planet imploding in silence. A trap, he said, built for us. To feed something worse. The Admiral frowned. It's over now. Whatever it was, it's gone. Lex didn't answer. That night, as the fleet prepared to leave orbit, Lex sat alone in the medbay, staring at his wrist scanner. The alien signal, the original Zadari distress call, was gone, but something else had taken its place. A new signal, coming from another system. Same signature, same encryption. Same trap, and under the transmission code was a single line of alien text. More DeathWorlders will come.